Hey guys, tonight we're stepping back into a world where your morning beverage might just leave you a little buzzed on alcohol, not caffeine. Picture it. The early morning mist hangs low over damp cobblestones. Church bells toll a sleepy rhythm, and someone's banging a wooden spoon against a pot to signal the start of the village market. You stretch, yawn, and reach not for a steaming cup of coffee, but for a frothy mug of beer. Yes, really, breakfast beer was not only normal in medieval Europe, it was pretty much the default. And spoiler, you probably wouldn't survive this morning routine. Not because of the alcohol, though. Let's be honest. You'd be tipsy by 10, but because of everything else you'd have to endure, just to get to that point. Unwashed wooden bowls, questionable stew, and a town crier who yells just a little too close to your ear. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know where you're watching from and what time it is in your part of the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge across the muddy courtyard of your thatched roof home, wiping sleep from your eyes. You're hungry, but not for eggs or toast. Your first thought is something a little bubbly, a little warm, and mildly intoxicating. Because in this era, beer is breakfast, not a chilled lager with a lime wedge. This is small beer, brewed at home or by the local alewife. It's weak in alcohol, but rich in calories, often cloudy and sometimes warm. It's safer than water, tastier than broth, and cheaper than wine. And you're not alone in your routine. Children, monks, peasants, and nobles alike begin their day with a mug. Your toddler's drinking beer. So is your grandmother. You nod good morning to the baker, who's halfway through his second cup and it's not even sunrise. Why beer, though? The short answer, water is terrifying. More on that soon. But also, beer is food. It's filling. It gives you energy for plowing, weaving, praying, or whatever. A typical Tuesday requires you can't pop into a cafe because there are none. You can't grab a protein bar. So you grab what your ancestors have always trusted, grain. Fermented and served in a chipped clay cup. There's also the social aspect. In taverns, people swap gossip over morning mugs. Families drink together before heading out to the fields. In convents, nuns quietly sip their allotted beer portions while copying manuscripts. It's not about getting drunk. It's about getting by. And unlike today's image of a roaring tavern, breakfast beer culture is gentle, introspective, even. It's part of the rhythm of life, not an escape from it. Still, you notice something odd as the centuries roll on. Not everyone's beer tastes the same. In one town, it's sour. In another, almost sweet. Some brew with oats. Others toss in herbs or even tree bark. There's no standard recipe, no regulations. Your body is the laboratory, and sometimes the results are unpredictable. You meet the local alewife, almost always a woman. She's been up since before dawn, boiling, steeping, stirring. Her hands are calloused, her apron stained with barley mash. You thank her for the pint. Even though you're not sure it's fully fermented, it's fine. You've built up a tolerance. Historians still argue whether small beer truly had enough alcohol to sterilize it, or if people just developed iron stomachs from sheer exposure. What's clear is that it became a cultural anchor. Whole economies relied on it. Taxes were based on it. Saints were invoked over it. And for centuries, there was no real competition. But that's about to change. You hear a whisper in the market. Just a whisper. Really about a strange, dark drink arriving by ship. It smells like burnt bread and spices. It's bitter. Some say it's medicine. Others say it's a sin. Either way, it's not beer. You glance at your mug, suddenly unsure. There's a new drink on the horizon, and it doesn't foam. You don't know it yet, but breakfast is about to change forever. You swirl the last bit of beer in your cup, watching the sediment settle like mud at the bottom of a puddle. The morning air is brisk, and you make your way to the town's communal well. You hesitate. The wooden bucket creaks as it lowers, and something about the dark water below makes your stomach clench. You're thirsty, yes, but you don't drink the water. No one does. In fact, across medieval Europe, water is viewed less as refreshment and more as a public health hazard. You wouldn't call it refreshing so much as possibly lethal. Rivers carry runoff from tanneries, human waste, dead animals, and worse, wells often sit far too close to latrines. Bathing water is reused and shared. And boiled water. That's for the sick and the very, very careful, not your average peasant on a Tuesday morning. So, what do you drink? Beer, of course. Not because it's trendy or even delicious, but because it's safer than anything else. You've heard the stories. Entire households laid out after a bad water day. There are whispered rumors about evil water spirits. But the real spirit-saving grace is fermentation. The brewing process, however rudimentary, involves boiling water, which kills off most harmful bacteria. Add in grain, a few hours of fermentation, and voila, a low-alcohol beverage that won't send you running to the village healer. It's hydration with insurance. But let's be honest, the taste isn't always ideal. Some batches are sour, others smell vaguely of turnips. Still, when your choices are get mildly tipsy or risk cholera, you choose the tipsy route. This is why beer, especially the light, quick-to-make kind called small beer, becomes a staple. It isn't reserved for parties or indulgence. It's your everyday drink. It's what's served with porridge, what you wash your bread down with, what you gulp after a hard morning of threshing grain or herding sheep. And no one raises an eyebrow. Not the priest. Not your children. Not even your goat who, by the way, keeps trying to drink from your mug. Now, you might think the nobility drank wine instead. And yes, they did when they could afford it. But even they weren't above a sturdy mug of morning ale, especially during lean years or long winters. Wine spoiled. Beer brewed fresh. Beer was democratic. Monasteries brewed it. Castles brewed it. Farms brewed it. Town halls often had public brewing rights. It wasn't just a drink, it was infrastructure. Yet even with all this reliance, water was never fully abandoned. People bathed rarely, cooked with it, used it for dyeing cloth and watering crops. But when it came to what entered your mouth, you were suspicious, understandably so. Historians still argue whether the average medieval person fully understood the link between dirty water and disease. Some believe the danger was intuitive. People noticed patterns. Others suggest the choice for beer was driven by taste, ritual, or nutrition more than hygiene. Whatever the reason, the result was the same. Beer ruled the breakfast table, but nothing lasts forever. Imagine hearing about a drink hot, dark, exotic, that doesn't need fermentation to be safe. A drink that keeps you awake rather than easing you into a mid-morning nap. At first, you scoff. Why fix what isn't broken? Then a traveling merchant hands you a sample. It smells odd, bitter, burnt, but it doesn't taste like swamp or metal, which already gives it points over your village's well water. And after a few sips, you feel different. Alert, focused, slightly tingly, like your thoughts have been polished with a cloth. It doesn't make you burp. It doesn't slow you down. It doesn't leave you needing a nap halfway through milking the cow. You ask the merchant what it's called. He says something you can't quite pronounce, something that sounds like kahwa, or maybe cave, or cafe. He shrugs. It'll catch on. He says, You still drink beer the next morning. Of course, it's what you know, but the memory of that bitter, bracing cup lingers like a scent on your cloak. You wonder if there's more of it in the next town. You wonder what breakfast might look like if your mug didn't make you sleepy. And for the first time in your life, you find yourself eyeing your beer with just the tiniest bit of doubt. You don't know it yet, but that doubt is contagious, and soon it'll be crossing borders as you sip the rest of your beer. Your mind wanders back to the strange drink the merchant offered you. The bitterness is still fresh on your tongue, and for a fleeting moment, you think about how different it feels from the heavy, comforting beer. There's something about it that wakes you up, makes you feel a little more alive. You can almost hear the wheels of history turning slowly, and for once, you wonder if your breakfast routine might actually change. The moment you begin hearing more about this Quahua drink, it isn't from the quiet whispers of foreign traders anymore. It's from the local priests and monks, too. The church, you see, isn't always opposed to novelty. At least, not when it comes to a drink that makes people stay awake during long masses and prayers. The idea that this new beverage, this strange black liquid, could help focus the mind is appealing, and the monks, ever on the lookout for ways to stay alert during their often lengthy hours of prayer, are intrigued. It seems that the religious angle is as much a part of coffee's rise as anything else. Back in the East, coffee wasn't just a drink. It was part of the Sufi mysticism, sipped to help fuel the long, deep nights of prayer. It was spiritual, waking you up not only physically, but mentally, for the divine, and when it begins reaching the doorsteps of Europe, coffee is initially seen by some as a way to help clerics and scholars focus. After all, why settle for a sleepy, sluggish day when you could be invigorated and more present during Mass? Still, there are skeptics. In fact, when coffee first arrives in Europe, it's met with a certain level of suspicion. The Catholic Church, in particular, is uncomfortable with the drink's origins, namely in the Muslim world. Some claim it's a pagan beverage, something that shouldn't be consumed by the faithful. The Pope at the time, Pope Clement VIII, even goes so far as to taste it himself before making any decree. But upon tasting it, he reportedly declares, "This is so delicious. We should baptize it." And just like that, coffee gets a Vatican stamp of approval. It's a pivotal moment. The Pope's blessing means coffee will start gaining acceptance in Europe. And the next thing you know, coffee houses begin popping up in cities across Italy, France, and beyond. It's not long before the urban elites and intellectuals flock to these cafes, turning them into hubs of conversation, creativity, and, of course, caffeine. But you're still in your village, not yet fully aware of what's coming. You still sip your beer each morning, your thoughts turning to the long hours ahead. It's when you begin hearing from your friends who have traveled to larger cities that you start to realize how much things are changing. You're told stories of cafes where scholars and thinkers meet daily to discuss philosophy, science, and art, all fueled by the powerful effects of coffee. You imagine these intellectuals sitting around with cups of this strange black liquid, their minds sharper, more focused than yours ever feels. Historians still debate whether it was the social aspect of coffee that allowed it to become so entrenched in European society, or whether it was the drink's physical effects. Either way, one thing is clear. Beer, which had ruled as the breakfast drink for centuries, now faces a challenger. But the shift isn't instantaneous. You, like many, are hesitant. You see coffee's allure, but it's still a foreign drink. Beer is comfort. It's tradition. It's what you've known your whole life. The thought of switching feels radical, like shaking off something fundamental about your way of life. And yet, when you wake the next day, you notice something unsettling. that lingering taste of coffee, the taste you couldn't quite shake, starts calling you back. Maybe, just maybe, tomorrow morning you'll give it a try. You might just find that the change isn't as radical as you thought. This quiet shift in breakfast routines, this subtlest of revolutions, is more than just a new drink. It's part of a larger movement. You don't realize it yet, but this is the beginning of Europe's Age of Enlightenment, the time when thinkers, artists, and innovators will begin to radically reshape the world. As you finish your last sip of beer, you can't help but wonder if, one day, your children will look at you and ask, "Dad, what's beer?" Perhaps they'll be the ones asking why you didn't start your day with coffee, the drink that will eventually replace beer as the fuel of intellectuals, dreamers, and revolutionaries. But for now, you're content with your beer. You're content with tradition until tomorrow. That is, the days pass, and you continue with your beer-laden breakfasts. Yet, each morning, the distant memory of that first sip of coffee nags at you. It doesn't help that more and more travelers bring tales of this mysterious drink with them. You begin to hear that some of the richer merchants, who've been to Venice or even as far as Constantinople, are starting their day with coffee rather than beer. It's a trend that's hard to ignore. But the biggest catalyst for coffee's rise isn't the intellectuals in cafes, nor the papal blessing. It's the sheer force of commerce, as European merchants and traders expand their reach across the globe. Coffee becomes more accessible. The Portuguese, the Dutch, and the French have all made their mark in the bustling ports of Africa and the Middle East. They've learned how to cultivate coffee, trade it, and transport it, setting up vast networks that bring the beans to the West. You can picture it. Ships filled with cargo bound for Europe. Alongside spices, silks, and other exotic goods, the dark, oily beans start making their way into the hands of merchants. And once the beans arrive, it's only a matter of time before the drink makes its way into the homes of the curious and the adventurous. Slowly, it becomes a luxury item. Only the wealthy can afford it at first, drinking it from finely crafted porcelain cups, like some prized treasure. For you, coffee is still an unfamiliar luxury, but with each passing year, the prices begin to drop. As the European colonies in the Americas and Asia begin to grow, the coffee trade booms, making the drink more available to the average citizen. But even as the social elite are sipping coffee and leaving their beer mugs behind, you continue your routine. You're loyal to beer. You still like it. It's warm. It's comforting. And, frankly, it gets you through the day. You wonder if the intellectuals in the cafes know that sometimes beer is just better for relaxing, but your curiosity grows. Maybe one day you'll try it again, just to see what the fuss is all about. And then there's the moment you least expect. Your neighbor, an old widow who's lived in the village longer than anyone cares to count, invites you over for breakfast. She's heard rumors of the new drink and, curious, she's decided to give it a try. This time, you're not just looking at coffee as an outsider. You're sitting across from her as she pours two small, dark cups of the stuff. Her hands are steady, the porcelain delicate, as she slides the cup toward you. You hesitate, but then you think, why not? Maybe it's time. You take the cup, warm and fragrant. It smells stronger than you expected, sharper than the earthy beer you've grown used to. As you sip, it hits you. It's bitter, very bitter. It's nothing like beer. And yet, there's a clarity to it that beer could never give you. You feel more awake, more aware. Your thoughts feel sharper, more organized, as though the haze you've been living in is slowly clearing away. You glance at the widow. She's watching you carefully, clearly waiting for your reaction. "Well?" she asks, a knowing smile on her lips. You take another sip. It's still bitter, but there's something appealing about it. It's clean, crisp in a way that beer never was. Your mind buzzes, not in the way beer makes you buzz, but in a far more focused and controlled way. You realize that coffee might just have its own kind of power. Historians still argue whether the taste of coffee was the key to its widespread popularity, or whether it was the mental clarity it brought. Some say it was the physical effects, the sudden energy, the heightened senses that made coffee irresistible to Europeans. Others believe it was the social nature of the coffee house that helped propel it. Regardless of which story is true, one thing is clear. Beer's reign as the breakfast drink of choice was quickly coming to an end. But you, like many others, still hesitate. Coffee's grip on your morning routine isn't instantaneous. You drink beer the next day, just out of habit. But when you hear the town blacksmith talking about how much clearer his head feels after a cup of coffee, you begin to wonder, could this be something more? Could it be the thing that finally helps you get through the long days of labor without feeling sluggish? You don't know it yet, but your village is on the brink of a quiet revolution, one cup at a time. Slowly, the coffee houses will start spreading throughout the towns. The coffee's effects, the conversations that happen over it, and the intellectuals who will swear by it. This new drink will become a cultural force that changes everything. But for now, you sip your beer and wonder what's next. The days begin to feel longer, more alert, as you take in the world around you. The coffee seems to be catching on, not in a rush, but quietly, steadily. Your neighbor's invitation was the beginning of your personal journey with this strange drink. But you're far from ready to abandon beer completely. It's comforting, it's familiar, and let's face it, it's been a staple of your mornings for years. But then, something unexpected happens. You notice a shift. You overhear snippets of conversations in town. Farmers, merchants, even the blacksmith, all discussing the benefits of coffee. The word on the street is that coffee doesn't just wake you up, it sharpens you. And when you wake up in the morning feeling sluggish, like your mind is still stuck in the fog of yesterday, that's a very tempting proposition. One morning, you decide to try it again. There's a small stall in the marketplace that now sells coffee. It's not the coffee house experience. Not yet, at least. It's just a vendor with a hot pot of dark liquid bubbling away over a fire. You approach, hesitant but curious. The stall owner, a scruffy man with an easy smile, hands you a small cup. He's quick to tell you it's the strongest brew in town. You take the cup, cradling it in your hands. The steam rises, carrying with it the bitter aroma. As you sip, you feel the same bitter punch in your mouth. But this time, you don't mind it so much. It's sharper, more invigorating. There's no turning back. Over the next few weeks, you find yourself reaching for coffee more than you ever thought you would. It's an easy habit to form. The market stall is always there, ready to fill your cup with that powerful, mysterious drink. Each morning, you find yourself looking forward to it. As the days pass, the comfort of beer becomes less necessary. You feel more awake, more aware. Coffee, it seems, is giving you more than just a jolt. It's giving you focus, clarity, and, perhaps most surprisingly of all, it's giving you energy without that heavy, sluggish feeling that beer often leaves behind. But there's something else. You begin to notice the coffee drinkers around you. Those who have embraced it fully, who've traded beer for coffee at their breakfast tables. They're different, not in any obvious way, but there's a certain energy about them. Their conversations are sharper, more engaged. It's as if they've tapped into something deeper, something more focused. And you begin to wonder if you're missing out. Soon enough, the talk of coffee houses reaches your town. The merchants, always keen to stay ahead of the curve, begin setting up places where people can gather over coffee. It's not quite the grand intellectual forums of Venice or Paris, but it's a start. And the idea of sitting with your neighbors, enjoying a hot cup of coffee. Sounds more appealing than you expected. You take the plunge and visit one of these new establishments. The atmosphere is nothing like you imagined. It's not just a place to drink, it's a place to be. The walls are lined with books, and there's a sense of quiet conversation in the air. There's something soothing about it all. No loud, raucous noise like the taverns, just the steady hum of people engaging in thoughtful discourse, their minds sharper from the caffeine. It doesn't take long before you find yourself becoming one of those people. Your mornings, once filled with the soft stupor of beer, are now energized by the potent kick of coffee. You realize that there's a distinct difference in how you feel. Throughout the day, your thoughts are clearer, more precise. Your energy lasts longer, and by midday, you're not as drained as you once were. As your community embraces coffee, it seems almost as if the entire town is waking up. You see merchants starting their day with a cup, their work more efficient, more focused. Even the farmers, once skeptical, start adopting coffee, believing it helps them with the long hours of labor they put in each day. It's clear, coffee is changing more than just your morning routine. It's reshaping the entire pace of life. Historians still argue whether it was the rise of the coffee house that made coffee so culturally entrenched in Europe, or whether it was the drink's practical effects, its ability to sharpen minds, fuel long hours, and improve productivity. But what you're experiencing here in your small village is undeniable. Coffee is replacing beer in the daily routines of the common folk. The quiet revolution is happening slowly. No one is shouting about it from the rooftops. No one is declaring war on beer or singing the praises of coffee from the town square. But you notice it in the faces of those around you. The new energy, the sharper focus, the ability to stay awake, engaged, and productive. It's undeniable. Your own shift is far from complete. But each day, you find yourself more and more drawn into the world of coffee. And as you finish another cup, you can't help but wonder, is this the beginning of a new era for you, for your village, for all of Europe? You still love your beer, but you're starting to wonder, could coffee, too, become a part of your story? The morning sun hits your small cottage, casting a soft glow across the table where your cup of coffee now sits. There's a rhythm to your new routine. You wake up, stretch, and immediately the thought of coffee fills your mind. You used to drag yourself out of bed, longing for the heaviness of beer to dull the early morning. But now, it's different. There's something about the taste of coffee that has started to feel right, as though this is how mornings were meant to be. Around you, the changes are becoming more pronounced. You're no longer alone in your preference. Coffee is slowly, but surely, infiltrating every corner of society. The once skeptical farmers have grown accustomed to the strong brew, their morning conversations less about the weather and more about the upcoming harvest, their minds buzzing with plans. The merchants are trading goods over cups of coffee, and even the town's older folk, who once thought the whole thing rather foolish, are giving it a try. The beer that used to accompany every meal is now reserved for the evening, the celebratory drink to wind down after a long day's work. You can't help but notice the subtle shift in the mood of the people you pass by on the streets. There's a liveliness in their step, a sharpness in their gaze. You've become part of this transformation, too, as you sit in the small market square, sipping your morning coffee. You notice the taverns are quieter. The laughter isn't as loud as it used to be. People aren't slumped over their mugs of beer, their eyes glazed with sleep. Instead, there's an alertness in their eyes. And then, one day, you hear the most curious of things. An old friend, a fellow who's always been a fan of strong beer, confides that he's given it up entirely. "I drink coffee now," he says with a grin. "Can't do without it. Feels like the world's sharper somehow. He's no longer just indulging in the quiet comforts of a pint at dawn. He's part of this new wave, a wave of people who are discovering the world through clearer eyes. It's fascinating. Really, you never would have imagined the simple act of drinking coffee could change so much. But the more you think about it, the more you realize it isn't just the drink itself, it's the environment it creates, it's the conversations, the shared moments, the sense of connection that happens over a cup of coffee. It's the communal effect of sitting together in quiet places, contemplating the world, and feeling more alive than ever. Yet, as the popularity of coffee spreads across Europe, not everyone is so enthusiastic. Beer still holds its place at the dinner table in many homes, a staple drink that has been passed down through generations. For many, the old ways die hard. Historians still argue whether it was the rise of coffee houses that brought intellectualism into the light, or whether it was coffee itself that created the space for it. What is clear, however, is that beer, once the king of the breakfast table, is gradually being dethroned. It may never disappear completely, but it's starting to feel like an afterthought in the face of coffee's growing influence. This shift is also seen in the growing number of coffee houses throughout the cities. Each establishment becomes more than just a place to drink. It's a gathering spot for thinkers, philosophers, poets, and anyone who seeks an escape from the mundane. In these spaces, ideas flow as freely as the coffee itself. The air is thick with conversation, the clink of cups, and the hum of minds eager to share their thoughts. You can already hear the chatter in your own village. People excitedly discussing the various flavors of coffee, debating which brew is best, and sharing their personal stories of how it's changed their mornings. You're becoming part of that world you never thought you would be. But here you are, sitting in one of these new coffee houses, sipping your cup and engaging in quiet conversation with strangers. You realize something. Then this is more than just a drink. It's a culture. It's a lifestyle. It's shaping the way people think, the way they connect with each other, the way they experience the world. Your own connection to coffee grows deeper. It's no longer just a drink to wake you up. It's a ritual. The first sip, the way the warm liquid spreads across your tongue, the quiet moments of reflection. It all becomes part of your day. And as you slowly sip, you begin to understand the strange allure that coffee holds over people. It's not just about the caffeine. It's not just about the taste. It's about what coffee does to you, how it transforms your perception, how it sharpens your mind and keeps you in the moment. In this strange, slowly shifting world, you begin to wonder, has coffee become a part of who you are? The days are getting longer as the seasons change, and so too is your relationship with coffee. Once an occasional indulgence, it has now become essential. The ritual of preparing it has woven itself seamlessly into your mornings. As the world wakes up around you, so does your mind, sharpened by the very cup of coffee that you hold. Coffee houses are now a common sight in your village, and each one seems to have its own character. Some are cozy, with dim lighting and the faint aroma of freshly ground beans lingering in the air. Others are bustling with life, with people standing around, waiting for their next cup and exchanging ideas. And you can't help but be swept up in the flow. What was once a simple morning routine has now become a social event. You chat with the baker about the rising price of sugar. You exchange thoughts with the young poet scribbling in the corner. And you listen to the philosopher talking about his latest musings on the world. You may not agree with everything they say, but the coffee seems to make the conversation easier. It gives you time to think, to pause, and to reflect. But the rise of coffee houses is not without its challenges. The old taverns, once the center of the community, are struggling to maintain their relevance. Beer, for all its comfort and tradition, no longer seems to have the same hold over the people. The regulars are still there, but their conversations have slowed. The laughter, once loud and boisterous, now feels muted, as though the buzz of alcohol is being replaced with something quieter, more thoughtful. You overhear a conversation at the local tavern, and it seems clear beer is becoming less of a morning necessity. Some of the farmers have given up their morning pint altogether, opting for coffee instead. The shift is subtle, but it's there, like a tide gradually washing away the old ways. Historians still debate whether coffee's true power lies in its ability to clear the mind and spark creativity, or whether it's simply the social spaces it creates, those small, quiet corners where ideas are exchanged and debated. There's also the question of whether the shift is purely about the beverage itself, or if it's part of a larger change in the way people are viewing the world. Coffee houses, after all, have become places of both refuge and inspiration. In fact, your village is beginning to resemble the stories you've heard about bustling European cities. The sense of community that once thrived in the taverns is slowly transitioning into these new spaces. Coffee is more than just a drink now. It's a statement. It represents a shift in priorities, in how people see themselves and each other. And you realize that you've changed too. You're no longer the same person who used to shuffle through the morning haze with beer in hand. The cultural significance of coffee is starting to be felt in every corner of your life. The conversation has changed. The pace of life has changed. Even your own habits are changing. You find yourself thinking more, reflecting deeper, and realizing that the coffee you drink has become a part of the person you are becoming. It has shaped your days in ways that beer never could. But not everyone is on board. You hear murmurs from the older generations, those who have lived through the thick and thin of beer's long reign. They argue that coffee doesn't have the same spirit as beer. They miss the camaraderie of the tavern, the relaxed feeling that came with a beer shared among friends. For them, coffee may be energizing, but it's not comforting in the same way. They miss the warmth that beer brought to their mornings, the sense of ease that the drink provided. But those are opinions fading into the past. As coffee grows in its dominance, it's no longer just for intellectuals or poets. It's for the working class, for the farmers, for anyone who needs the energy to get through the day. The transformation is palpable. Your community is waking up quite literally, and so are the people within it. The old world is giving way to the new. And as you sit in your favorite coffee house, sipping your cup, you wonder where this journey will take you. Will coffee become the fuel for the entire world? Will beer ever return to its place of dominance? Or has that chapter closed for good? You can't say for certain. But what you do know is this. There's something about coffee that seems to capture the spirit of this new era. The era of change, of sharper minds and clearer thoughts. And as you take another sip, you can't help but smile. For all the doubts and questions you once had, it seems clear now. Coffee has replaced beer, and with it, a new world is emerging. You're still adjusting to this new world where coffee reigns supreme. The change is not immediate, and yet it's everywhere you look. You walk through the bustling streets, cup of coffee in hand, and notice how different it feels compared to those mornings when beer was the drink of choice. There's a freshness in the air now, a slight buzz of productivity that you can't ignore. The marketplace is no longer a place of sleepy murmurs and sluggish workers. It's alive with energy, ideas being exchanged, and the hum of conversations that span across tables and coffee cups. In the village square, you pass the old tavern where you once spent your mornings with the locals, the smell of beer always hanging heavy in the air. Now, the tavern seems almost abandoned. Its once busy morning hours filled with nothing but the occasional lingering patron. It's as if the tides of time have changed. and those who once clung to the familiar comfort of beer are starting to fade away. Meanwhile, the coffee houses are thriving. You can almost hear the steady rhythm of the cups being filled, the hiss of steam from the machines, the sound of quiet chatter, an ambiance that's entirely different from the rowdy mornings of old. In one coffee house, you overhear a group of merchants discussing the best beans they've tasted on their travels. They share tips on how to brew the perfect cup, and one of them even goes as far as to show off his newest acquisition, a hand-carved wooden cup from the East. You can see the excitement in their eyes, the joy of discovery. Coffee has sparked a new kind of curiosity, one that doesn't just focus on the drink itself, but on the culture around it. You, too, have begun to appreciate the subtleties, the rich variety of flavors that each cup offers, like tiny mysteries unfolding with every sip. But even as coffee continues to rise in prominence, you notice subtle resistance. People who are loyal to their old ways, people who still believe in the simplicity of a morning beer, begin to voice their concerns more loudly. Coffee's all well and good, says an older man in the village square, his hands gripping the rim of a tarnished mug. But it's just a fad. Beer has been with us since the dawn of time. It's not going anywhere. You can see the frustration in his eyes. For him, beer is a symbol of tradition, of everything that is tried and true. And though you understand his attachment, you also sense that something has changed beyond mere preferences. Coffee has become more than just a drink. It's become a symbol of a new era, one that's moving faster than anyone expected. And it's hard to deny the evidence. You see it in the new faces of the coffeehouse patrons, the intellectuals, the workers, and even the children who've come to see coffee as a grown-up's beverage. Historians still argue whether the spread of coffee symbolizes a deeper societal shift, one that reflects the intellectual and cultural movements that were blossoming across Europe during this period. Did coffeehouses become the epicenter of modern thought, a place where ideas were nurtured and revolutionized? Or was it simply that people were thirsty for change, and coffee was the drink that brought them together? Regardless of the debate, one thing is clear. Coffee is here to stay. It has embedded itself so deeply into the fabric of society that it seems almost impossible to imagine a world without it. You, too, have become a part of this new culture. You no longer think of those early days when beer was the drink of choice. You think of mornings as opportunities, moments to reflect and connect. You've traded the dull fog of alcohol for the sharp clarity that comes with a cup of coffee. And as you sit in a coffee house, reflecting on all that's changed, you can't help but appreciate the beauty of this transition. The world is evolving, and with it, the way people interact, the way they view their world, and perhaps, most importantly, the way they begin their day. Coffee is no longer just a drink. It's a part of the rhythm of life itself. It's as though everything around you has woken up. Two people who were once sluggish, stumbling through their day, now walk with a spring in their step, their minds alert and ready for whatever the day may bring. The coffee houses are the heart of this transformation, offering more than just a drink. They offer a new outlook on life. As the sun sets and you take your final sip for the day, you wonder if this is the dawn of something even greater. Perhaps the rise of coffee is only the beginning. Will there be new trends, new habits, new rituals to discover in the coming years? For now, you're content to sit in the warm glow of the coffee house, the rich aroma of beans in the air, and think about all that has changed and all that is still to come. The coffee houses in your village have become more than just places for a quick cup. They are the pulse of the community. As the sun sets and the shadows grow longer, you settle into a chair in one of your favorite spots, a quiet corner by the window. The sounds of conversations float around you, the gentle clink of porcelain cups, the soft murmur of laughter, the hiss of the coffee machine, all blending into a comforting hum. This is the place where you come to unwind, to reflect, and to recharge before the evening sets in. But as much as you've come to love these little havens, you've also noticed the way they've altered the way people behave. There's a new social etiquette emerging in these spaces, an unspoken rule book that governs the flow of conversations. You've overheard debates, deep philosophical discussions, and the exchange of theories about everything from art to politics. It's almost as if the very presence of coffee is elevating the nature of the conversation itself. Gone are the days of aimless chatter. Now, people seem more thoughtful, more introspective. Perhaps it's the caffeine, or maybe it's the atmosphere itself, those warm, wooden tables and dimly lit corners that seem to encourage serious contemplation. You take another sip, and as the warmth spreads through you, you wonder if this is the power of coffee. It brings clarity, it sharpens the mind, and it turns the mundane into something profound. You've noticed that even the most simple observations now carry a weight they didn't before. The weather, for instance, isn't just the weather. It's a metaphor for life, for change, for the cycles of nature that mirror human existence. How is it that a beverage can inspire such reflection? How is it that, for centuries, something as humble as a coffee bean has spurred the minds of artists, scientists, and thinkers alike? Historians still debate whether coffee houses helped shape the Enlightenment, or if it was simply the fertile ground in which ideas naturally sprouted. After all, it was during this time that the notion of public discourse really took root. Coffee houses became a symbol of intellectual exchange, and many believe they were the birthplace of many of the era's greatest ideas. It's tempting to romanticize it, to imagine a room full of brilliant minds coming together to create new philosophies, write groundbreaking treatises, or even plan revolutions. But is it really that simple? Or did coffee merely provide a setting for human nature to unfold, a tool for productivity that merely nudged creativity in the right direction? You're drawn back into your thoughts as the barista comes by, offering you a refill. There's something about this moment, the subtle clink of the coffee cup, the hum of conversations, the feeling of being part of something larger that makes you appreciate the quiet power of coffee. It's not just about the caffeine rush. It's about the community, the ideas, the reflections, and the shared experience. You find yourself wondering if this is a turning point, not just for you, but for society itself. Is the coffee house the new heart of civilization? Will future generations look back on this time and say that it was here, in these warm rooms, that the great ideas of tomorrow were born? As you take a moment to reflect, you see an elderly man across the room, hunched over a book, writing furiously with a quill. Perhaps he's creating the next great novel, or maybe he's sketching out a blueprint for an invention. Either way, you can't help but notice the calm focus in his eyes, the way he seems to be lost in his work. It's almost as if the coffee has taken him to another world, a world where the possibilities are endless, where ideas can flow as freely as the coffee itself. The room is alive with energy, yet there's a quiet stillness in the air, a sense that something significant is happening. Perhaps it's the conversation swirling around you, or maybe it's the sound of the coffee being poured. But you can't shake the feeling that something big is unfolding. The influence of coffee on this new society is undeniable. It has replaced beer not just as the morning drink of choice, but as a symbol of progress, of clarity, of a world ready to embrace new ideas and new ways of thinking. But then, just as easily, you think back to the quiet mornings when the tavern was the center of your world. There's a certain warmth to those memories, a comfort in the simple, familiar act of sharing a drink with friends. Beer, with all its history and tradition, has its own place in the world, and perhaps, as coffee continues to grow, it will only enrich the world you live in, rather than replace what came before. As you finish your cup, you stand up and take one last look around. The room is still filled with the quiet hum of conversation, the sounds of creativity in motion, and the steady presence of coffee as the catalyst. For now, you leave the coffee house, stepping back into the night, knowing that tomorrow will bring another cup, another conversation, another opportunity to be part of something larger than yourself. And as the moonlight flickers in the distance, you can't help but smile, knowing that coffee is more than just a drink. It's a reflection of the times, a symbol of progress, and a constant companion as you continue to move forward, one sip at a time. You're now part of a culture that revolves around coffee. You can feel it in the air, the way people speak about it, the way they live their lives around it. It's no longer just a drink. It's a ritual, a lifestyle, a companion to the everyday hustle. You've noticed the shift not just in the social atmosphere, but also in how people structure their days. Mornings are no longer about slowly waking up with a pint of beer and a lethargic stretch. No, now it's about the sharp jolt of caffeine that pulls you into the day, ready to face whatever comes your way. You've come to see the coffee house as a place of quiet energy, a place where the buzz of caffeine is matched only by the hum of conversation. It's not just intellectuals or thinkers who come here. It's people from all walks of life, artists sketching their latest masterpieces, politicians hashing out deals, or just friends catching up over a cup. There's an undeniable magic in these moments, a certain sense of potential, as though you're surrounded by the possibility of something remarkable happening. Every sip feels like a step forward, and every moment in the coffee house is a pause in the rapid pace of the world, where everything slows down just enough to make room for ideas to grow. But beyond the immediate impact of coffee on your own life, you begin to see its effects on the world at large. As coffee spreads across Europe, it's not just shifting morning habits, it's influencing the very fabric of society. The coffee houses have become gathering places, almost like the modern-day equivalent of the agora, where people exchange ideas, debate policies, and engage in discussions that could alter the course of history. The more you think about it, the more it becomes apparent coffee is a catalyst for change. Historians still debate whether coffee houses directly contributed to the scientific and political movements that defined the Enlightenment. But you can't help but feel that there's a connection. It's not just that coffee helped people stay awake during long, intellectual discussions. It's that coffee, in its very essence, represents a shift in the way people approach the world. It encourages alertness, clarity, and engagement with the present moment. The slow, contemplative nature of sipping a cup of coffee forces you to pause, to think deeply, in a time when the world is rapidly changing. That pause becomes more important than ever as the centuries pass. Coffee's impact only grows, no longer confined to the elite and intellectuals. Coffee becomes a drink for the masses, one that transcends social classes. It's found in the hands of laborers, soldiers, farmers, and mothers alike. Everyone has a relationship with coffee now. Some drink it to wake up, others to socialize, and some even for its medicinal properties. There are theories that coffee helped shape the Industrial Revolution, offering a quick burst of energy to factory workers and allowing them to maintain productivity through long shifts. You begin to see the wider reach of this humble drink, its presence in all walks of life, influencing both the mundane and the extraordinary. And yet, despite all its widespread use, you can't ignore the darker side of coffee's rise to power. Coffee plantations, particularly in the New World, were built on the backs of enslaved peoples. and many of the trade routes that brought coffee to Europe were marked by the brutal realities of colonialism. Historians argue that the expansion of the coffee trade is inextricably linked with the exploitation of workers and the environmental destruction that came with mass production. It's a harsh reminder that even the most beloved commodities have dark histories that cannot be ignored. You take another sip, the bitter taste lingering on your tongue, and wonder how coffee's journey will continue to unfold in the centuries to come. Despite its complex history, coffee has undeniably become a symbol of progress and modernity. It's a drink that has stood the test of time, adapting to the needs and desires of different societies, while maintaining its core essence, from the dusty markets of the Arab world to the bustling streets of Europe. Coffee has traveled far, evolving with each new culture it encounters. It's as though the drink itself has taken on a life of its own, becoming something more than just a beverage. It's a statement, a symbol of the age in which it's consumed. You think about how, in a way, coffee has accompanied the rise of modernity itself, the Industrial Revolution, the Age of Enlightenment, and even the rise of the modern coffee shop. All of these moments in history have been intertwined with coffee. It's as though, through its very consumption, coffee has helped shape the course of human history. It has been a silent witness to the rise and fall of empires, the birth of new ideas, and the transformation of society itself. And yet, even as you reflect on coffee's impact, you can't help but think about the future. What role will coffee play in the years to come? Will it continue to evolve, adapting to new technologies, new cultures, and new ways of living? Or will it eventually fade into the background, replaced by something newer, something faster, something more convenient? Only time will tell. But for now, as you sit with your cup, savoring the rich flavor and the comforting warmth, you can't help but feel grateful for coffee's long and storied history. It's a drink that has accompanied you through so many moments in your life. Moments of joy, of creativity, and of quiet contemplation. And as the night deepens and the coffee cools in your cup, you realize that coffee is more than just a drink. It's a part of who you are, a reminder of the world's complexities, and the ways in which something as simple as a cup of coffee can shape the course of history. The following day, as you wake up to the faint sound of birds outside your window, you feel that familiar urge to brew your morning cup of coffee. It's become second nature now, this daily ritual, almost like a rite of passage into the new day. You find yourself savoring the aroma of the beans as they grind, the scent filling the air, filling you with warmth before the first sip even touches your lips. You can't help but smile, reflecting on how this simple drink has transformed not just mornings, but entire societies. It's in these quiet moments, sipping your coffee alone, that you think about the history that has led to this moment. Coffee houses weren't always places of intellectual exchange. In fact, they started as something far simpler, gathering spots where the community could come together to share a drink and escape the chaos of daily life. In the early days, they were more like taverns than the sophisticated spaces they've become. It was here that ideas were born. Yes, but it was also where gossip and local news spread. Coffee houses were spaces where the everyday man could converse with the scholars and the politicians of the day, often in the same room. There's something striking about that, the leveling power of coffee. How it brought together people from all walks of life in one shared space. Historians still argue whether the rise of coffee houses in the 17th and 18th centuries played a role in shaping the political revolutions of the time. Some believe these spaces were integral to the formation of new political movements, where ideas about freedom, equality, and justice were discussed and debated. Others contend that coffee houses were simply a byproduct of social changes already underway. Either way, You can't help but feel that coffee was at the center of it all, fueling the conversations and thoughts that would eventually change the course of history. You think about how the coffee house became a sort of secular sanctuary, a place to escape from the constraints of the church and monarchy. While the church had long controlled the narrative of what was acceptable to discuss, coffee houses were free from such influence. They became the breeding grounds for progressive ideas and free thought, where thinkers could meet and converse without fear of censorship. These spaces were built on the foundation of coffee, where one could sip slowly and think deeply, without the rush that the outside world often demanded. And yet, coffee wasn't just about intellectualism. It was also about the ordinary man's ability to engage with the world on his terms. It was about connection, conversation, and community. You've witnessed firsthand how coffee can bring together people from all walks of life. You've seen it in the way people interact at the local cafe, whether they're discussing the latest political scandal, the best local restaurants, or even the weather. These conversations, simple and mundane as they may seem, are the threads that weave society together. In these interactions, you see the reflection of the greater impact coffee has had on the world. You recall one evening, not long ago, when you overheard a conversation at your favorite cafe between two older gentlemen. One was talking about the early days of coffee's arrival in the city, when it was considered a strange and exotic drink. He described how people were skeptical at first, how the idea of drinking hot, bitter liquid from far-off lands seemed almost unappealing. It was only after several years that the coffee house culture truly took off, and coffee became a staple of everyday life. The other man laughed and said, "Now we can't even imagine a day without it." It was a simple observation, but it perfectly captured the essence of coffee's journey. From a strange, foreign substance to a global commodity, coffee has embedded itself in the very fabric of daily life. The conversation reminded you of something else. How much of history's most significant changes were once thought to be inconsequential, even absurd. The early doubters of coffee, like the ones who thought the beverage would never catch on, are a reminder that the most powerful shifts often start quietly, with little fanfare, in the most unexpected of places. As you reflect on this, you realize that coffee, this simple drink, has had an outsized impact on the course of human civilization. You think back to the broader context, to the great sweep of history. Coffee came to symbolize not only intellectual enlightenment, but also the rise of a new middle class, one that had the means and the desire to challenge established norms. It was in the coffee houses where writers like Voltaire and Rousseau wrote the works that would help shape the Enlightenment. It was in the coffee houses where the ideas that would give birth to democratic revolutions were shared. You wonder, would these changes have happened without coffee? Would the modern world look as it does today if coffee had never been embraced? While the answer is, of course, unknowable, the question lingers in your mind. You can't help but think that coffee, in its own subtle way, has been the silent architect of the modern world. From the casual conversations of intellectuals to the political movements that changed the very fabric of society, coffee has been there, quietly influencing the course of events. Now, as you take another sip, you feel a sense of gratitude for the simple joy of coffee. It has witnessed the rise and fall of empires, the birth of new ideas, and the transformation of societies. And as you settle back into your chair, feeling the warmth spread through your body, you can't help but marvel at how this unassuming drink has helped shape the world you live in. You're sipping your coffee again, noticing the familiar warmth as it fills you, and as you feel the caffeine begin its gentle pull on your senses. You reflect on how much more there is to explore. Coffee is far more than just a beverage. It's a symbol, a bridge connecting cultures, and perhaps more importantly, a reflection of a globalizing world. Across continents, coffee has quietly traversed history, from its origins in Ethiopia to the crowded streets of Amsterdam and beyond. The world you live in now is deeply influenced by that one plant, and the story of its rise continues to unfold in unexpected ways. The history of coffee is like a map of human expansion and innovation. You can trace the patterns of trade, colonialism, and cultural exchange through the journeys of coffee beans. From the 16th century onward, coffee spread rapidly, but it wasn't just a product of trade. It was, in many ways, a commodity that defined the very nature of global capitalism. Coffee was once part of a tightly controlled trade network, closely monitored by colonial powers who understood its economic value. The expansion of coffee production in the Caribbean, South America, and Southeast Asia was both an opportunity for immense profit and a catalyst for the economic structures that followed. As the centuries passed, coffee's journey began to intersect with the social and political movements that marked the modern world. You think back to the origins of the coffee trade, to the colonial plantations that fueled much of Europe's early economic growth. The exploitative nature of coffee production in the New World has often been discussed in history books, but there's something humbling about realizing that coffee, while essential to the development of the modern economy, was also deeply tied to human suffering and inequality. Historians are still grappling with the lasting effects of the coffee trade's darker side. Coffee was grown on large plantations, often using enslaved or exploited labor, and in some cases, entire communities were displaced to make way for vast coffee fields. The environmental toll was also immense, as vast stretches of land were cleared to make room for coffee trees. Delicate ecosystems were destroyed, and local wildlife lost their habitats. There's still debate today over how the legacy of coffee production during these times should be addressed, and whether the modern coffee industry is doing enough to rectify past wrongs. But as you sit with your cup, the bitter truth of history feels distant. The warmth and comfort you feel now seem disconnected from the darker realities that the beans of your coffee once lived through. Still, it's a reminder that everything we consume has a story, a history, a journey, and an impact. For coffee, that journey has been long and fraught with complexity, and while it's a drink you take for granted today, its path to your cup has been paved by centuries of human history. As you continue to sip, you can't help but notice that coffee has always been intertwined with the social forces of its time. Take the rise of coffee houses, for example. These small, humble establishments have become a symbol of social change and progress. Yet, they were also a place where the most important political movements took shape. In the 18th century, as Europe grappled with revolutions, coffee houses became hotbeds of discourse. People from all walks of life gathered together, sharing ideas and debating issues that would shape the future of nations. Coffee houses were the birthplace of revolutions, literally and figuratively. The French Revolution, for instance, had its roots in coffeehouse conversations, as did many of the intellectual movements that spread across Europe. You start to wonder how many of today's most pressing issues have been shaped by the spaces we create over a cup of coffee. The way people come together in cafes or break rooms, discussing everything from politics to personal matters, is a modern-day reflection of the coffeehouse culture that influenced so much of European history. Perhaps, in some small way, history is repeating itself. People today continue to meet in coffee shops, sip their beverages, and engage in the kind of casual conversations that lead to change. Both big and small, the coffee house has not disappeared. It has only evolved. As you continue to think about the role of coffee in society, you're struck by how it has remained a constant, a thread running through history, from the revolutionary fervor of 18th century Europe to the quiet moments of reflection in today's bustling cafes, coffee has been a companion to intellectuals, activists, and everyday people alike. You begin to understand just how essential coffee has been in shaping not just the moments of history, but also the very rhythm of daily life. And as the days go by, you realize that your relationship with coffee is just another part of a much larger, timeless story. The drink that once fueled revolutions and intellectual movements now fuels your own thoughts, ideas, and creativity. With every cup, you're part of that ongoing journey, a journey that spans centuries, continents, and cultures. Coffee has been, and will continue to be, a silent companion in this ever-evolving story. Historians still argue about the long-term impact of coffee on global economies, but there's no denying that its influence has been profound. The simple act of brewing a cup of coffee today is part of a much larger cultural tradition, one that continues to evolve with each passing year. Whether you're sitting alone in your living room or enjoying a coffee with friends at a cafe, you're participating in a tradition that has transcended time and space. And as you take another sip, you can't help but feel connected to something much larger than yourself, a connection that, like coffee, has stood the test of time. The gentle swirl of steam rises from your cup as you take another sip. The day seems to stretch out in front of you, and with each passing moment, you feel more relaxed, more aware of the cozy quiet around you. It's easy to forget, in these peaceful moments, that coffee has had a turbulent past one, shaped by political upheavals, changing economies, and technological advancements. What once began as a simple drink has become a global industry, with complex networks of trade, politics, and culture behind it. But that doesn't stop you from enjoying your cup. As you take another slow sip, you remember how the very origins of coffee are shrouded in myth. While we know it was likely discovered in Ethiopia, the precise moment and place when humans began to cultivate coffee remain elusive. Some stories say that a goat herder named Kaldi discovered the energizing effects of coffee beans when his goats started dancing after eating the red berries. It's a charming story, but historians still argue whether it's based on fact or folklore. What is clear is that, at some point in the 9th century, coffee found its way to the Arabian Peninsula, where it became something much more than a casual snack for livestock. By the time coffee made its way into the Islamic world, it was no longer just a novelty. Coffee was embraced as a drink that could fuel the long nights of prayer, meditation, and study, especially in the cities of the Middle East. The first known coffee houses, called kahvekhane, emerged in the 15th century in places like Mecca and Cairo, offering a space for people to gather, converse, and engage with one another in new ways. These early coffee houses were a far cry from the modern-day cafes you know so well. They were places where conversation and intellectual exchange flourished, often attracting scholars, poets, and artists who used the spaces to work on their craft. Historians still debate whether these early coffee houses had a greater social or religious impact. Some believe that the spread of coffee was an integral part of the cultural renaissance that swept through the Islamic world, influencing everything from art to politics. Others, however, argue that the coffee house was simply a reflection of broader societal shifts, a natural consequence of the increasing complexity of urban life. Either way, it's undeniable that coffee played a major role in the cultural landscape of the time. As the centuries passed, coffee spread beyond the Middle East and North Africa, making its way into Europe in the 17th century. By the time it reached England, it was already a well-established beverage in many parts of the world, and it quickly became an integral part of English life. In fact, coffee houses in London became something of a social institution The first English coffee house, opened in 1652 by a man named Pasqua Rosé, quickly became a hot spot for discussion, debate, and business transactions. It wasn't just intellectuals who frequented these establishments. Businessmen, politicians, and merchants also found themselves drawn to these spaces, where the price of coffee was far more affordable than that of the wine or beer that had once been the drink of choice. But there was something unique about coffee houses. They became spaces where anyone, regardless of their social standing, could participate in discussions about everything from trade to politics. Historians argue that this democratization of conversation was a vital part of the intellectual development of the time. It was within these coffee houses that the great thinkers of the Enlightenment, figures like John Locke and Voltaire, debated ideas that would shape the future of Europe. Coffee houses were the crucibles of political thought and social change, where the groundwork for revolutions and philosophical movements was laid. The spread of coffee and the proliferation of coffee houses were tied to broader economic shifts that were reshaping Europe during the early modern period. Coffee was not just a drink. It was a commodity that fueled the expansion of trade and industry, linking Europe to the rest of the world in ways that had never been seen before. As the coffee trade grew, so too did the systems that underpinned it. Colonialism, the rise of the merchant class, and the development of modern capitalism. In some ways, coffee was at the heart of these transformations, serving as both a symbol of and a catalyst for the global economy. Yet, despite the role coffee played in the development of modern capitalism, it was still a drink that was primarily enjoyed by the wealthy. For most of the 17th and 18th centuries, coffee was an expensive commodity, and only the affluent could afford to indulge in it regularly. However, the Industrial Revolution brought about a dramatic shift in coffee consumption, as mass production techniques and the rise of global trade made coffee more accessible. It slowly became a drink for the masses, no longer confined to the elite circles of society. Coffee was now available to everyone, and its role in daily life began to change. You take a moment to reflect on how coffee's journey through history mirrors so many of the transformations that have shaped the modern world. What started as a mysterious drink in the hills of Ethiopia has, over centuries, become a cultural touchstone, a symbol of social connection and intellectual exchange. Coffee's journey has been shaped by revolutions, trade routes, and technological advancements, but at its core, it remains a simple drink. A drink that's part of the ritual of daily life. As you sip your coffee, the world around you seems both vast and incredibly small. The rich history of coffee, with its complex networks of trade, culture, and politics, has shaped the world in ways you may never have fully appreciated. But in this quiet moment, with the steam rising from your cup, it's clear that coffee's journey is far from over. From the bustling streets of ancient Mecca to the cafes of modern-day cities, coffee continues to evolve, connecting people and ideas in ways that are both profound and deceptively simple. As you sip your coffee, the rich warmth of it comforting you, you think about how much of the world you've just learned about through a simple drink. What seems so casual and effortless today was once a drink that carried with it the weight of history. Coffee's journey isn't just about beans and brewing methods. It's about the broader global dynamics that shaped it along the way, from the colonial plantations that powered empires to the modern coffee houses that continue to shape intellectual and social movements. Coffee has always been at the heart of cultural exchange and human connection. Now, you might not think of it this way as you hold your cup, but the world of coffee has always been deeply intertwined with the way empires and countries interacted with each other. Take, for example, the rise of coffee cultivation in the Caribbean and South America during the 18th and 19th centuries, as European empires expanded their reach across the globe. They saw coffee as a prime commodity to cultivate. Plantations were established in the Caribbean islands, Brazil, and Colombia. Powered by enslaved African labor, historians argue that the demand for coffee, along with sugar and tobacco, was one of the driving forces behind the expansion of the transatlantic slave trade. It's a grim reality that coffee, along with many other global commodities, was part of a system that supported brutal exploitation. Even though today's coffee industry looks vastly different, the echoes of this history linger. Yet, despite the darkness that hangs over coffee's past, you can't help but marvel at how the drink continues to evolve. After centuries of being tied to exploitation and empires, coffee has become a symbol of individualism, creativity, and global interconnectedness. Today, it's more than just a drink. It's a daily ritual that connects people from all walks of life. Whether you're sipping a cappuccino in a cozy cafe, brewing a cup at home, or enjoying a quick espresso in a busy office, coffee is a constant presence in your life. It's the one thing that remains unchanged amidst the rapid shifts in global society. Perhaps one of the most significant shifts in coffee's global journey came during the 20th century. With the rise of multinational coffee chains, think about the Starbucks phenomenon that took root in the 1990s. While coffee houses had existed for centuries, it was the rise of large coffee chains that made coffee a true global product. No longer confined to specific regions or cultures, coffee became a universal beverage that people all over the world could enjoy, often at the same time. As you sip your cup, it's almost impossible not to think about how this has affected the way people view coffee. What was once a symbol of social exchange and intellectual discourse became commercialized, and the quaint charm of the local coffee house was replaced by a much more industrialized experience. Historians still debate whether this commercialization of coffee is a positive or negative development. Some argue that it has made coffee more accessible to the masses, democratizing the experience of enjoying a high-quality drink. Others believe that it's diluted the essence of what coffee has meant in centuries past, turning a rich cultural tradition into a commodified experience. It's a fascinating discussion, and it reminds you that coffee's journey isn't just about the drink itself. It's about how it reflects the changing tides of society, economics, and culture. As you continue sipping your coffee, you think about the contemporary focus on specialty coffee. In the past, coffee was something you simply drank for the buzz it provided. But today, it's become a multi-billion-dollar industry dedicated to cultivating and consuming the perfect cup. Coffee lovers around the world obsess over the ideal brewing methods, the best beans, and the perfect grind. There's an entire subculture that exists around the art of making the best coffee, with baristas mastering their craft in pursuit of the perfect espresso shot or latte art. It's a trend that has created an entirely new relationship with coffee. Instead of just consuming the drink, you now engage with it in a much deeper way. You take pride in the details, the origin of the beans, the brewing process, and even the design of the coffee shop itself. You're not just drinking coffee. You're appreciating it in a way that was once reserved for wine or fine tea. Coffee, once a simple morning pick-me-up, has now become a hobby, an art form, and even a social statement. And yet, no matter how refined the process of making coffee has become, it still retains the same essential qualities it's had for centuries. The warmth, the comforting aroma, and the sense of ritual that comes with each sip. The coffee you drink today still connects you to those early coffee drinkers in the Middle East, to the colonial plantations of the Caribbean, and to the bustling coffee houses of Enlightenment-era Europe. The drink may have evolved, but its core function hasn't changed. It's still something that brings people together, sparks conversation, and provides a moment of reflection amidst the chaos of daily life. The rise of coffee culture and specialty coffee movements highlights how coffee has become so much more than just a beverage. It's a cultural touchstone, a symbol of modernity, and a bridge between past and present. Whether it's a casual cup of coffee at home or a carefully crafted espresso in a trendy cafe, coffee has found its place in the lives of millions, and it's likely to continue evolving for generations to come. As you reach the bottom of your cup, you realize just how much history is packed into each sip. The journey of coffee is one that spans centuries and continents, and each moment of enjoyment is part of that ongoing story. And even though coffee may have changed over time, from its roots in ancient Ethiopia to its place in modern global culture, it remains one of the most universal experiences humanity shares. Coffee has truly transcended time. You finish your cup of coffee, and for a brief moment, the world around you feels still. The history of this humble drink, from its discovery in Ethiopia to its rise as a global commodity, seems to unfold in the quiet space between each sip. But even as you reflect on how far coffee has come, you know that its story isn't over yet. It's still evolving, adapting to new trends, technologies, and tastes. As you sit back and enjoy the lingering warmth, you realize that the journey of coffee, like your own, is ever-changing. In the grand scheme of things, it's remarkable how much coffee has influenced our world. Both socially and economically, coffee shaped the rise of global trade networks, fueled the rise of intellectual and political movements, and even altered the daily routines of people around the world. And now, in the present day, coffee has become a symbol of connection, a global ritual that binds people together across continents, cultures, and time zones. It's hard to think of a drink that has had such a widespread impact, but the true beauty of coffee lies in its simplicity. So, here you are, taking a moment to breathe deeply, feeling the effects of the caffeine as it gently nudges you awake and alert. Coffee has been a companion for centuries, and even as trends shift and new drinks emerge, coffee remains a constant. It's both comforting and exciting to think that something so humble and simple continues to hold such a powerful place in the world's cultural fabric. As you sit back in your chair and let the last traces of your coffee settle in your mind, you notice how much history can be found in a single cup. It's a reminder that the ordinary things in life, things we often take for granted, carry with them the weight of stories, people, and moments that shape the world. Historians still debate the full impact of coffee on history, from its role in the shaping of the European Enlightenment to its contributions to the development of modern capitalism. But one thing is certain: coffee has played an important role in the shaping of the modern world, and as you finish the last few drops of your drink, you can't help but wonder how much more coffee's influence will grow in the years to come. Perhaps you'll discover yet another layer of history tied to this drink. Or maybe you'll find yourself simply enjoying another cup. Coffee has stood the test of time, and it will continue to do so for generations. It remains a staple of modern life, and no matter how much the world changes, the rituals and traditions tied to coffee will likely remain constant. Now, as you feel the caffeine settle, you begin to relax. The steady rhythm of your breathing matches the pace of the world outside, and for just a few moments, you're at peace, content with the knowledge that history has found its way into something as simple as a cup of coffee. As the night draws on, you allow yourself to drift into a deeper sense of calm, the comforting warmth of the coffee lingering just long enough to carry you into the quiet of sleep. So now, let the final images of this story settle in. Imagine the early coffee houses in the Middle East, the bustling streets of 17th century London, the plantation workers in South America, and the modern-day baristas perfecting their craft. All of these moments and places are connected through one simple drink, a drink that transcends time and space. As you lay your head down, knowing that this drink has touched so many lives and continues to shape the world, you can't help but smile. This is the story of coffee one that is far from over. Now, dim the lights, relax, and drift off into sleep, carrying with you the warmth and the history of a drink that's been around for centuries,